Osio, and happy First Nations Monday. So today is week 13 in our prayer devotionals. And 17 years ago, we labeled this week's prayer focus as the Christian Indian. And not trying to be offensive in any way, but to bring to light this idea that for hundreds of years in this country, the American Indian had to either choose to keep our identity as Indian or accept the identity of being a Christian. But it was unacceptable to be both. And so for, almost 20 years now, I've been part of Native American ministry in this country, specifically advocating for culture and advocating for ethnic identity in the context of Christianity. There isn't anything in Scripture that suggests that we have to give up our ethnic identity to accept Christ. In fact, there's Scripture that specifically speaks to that those who were Gentile or are Gentile don't have to become Jewish to have the Christian faith. And so although we certainly understand that our roots are in Judaism and that Jesus is Jewish and came from the Jewish culture, we don't have to reject our current culture and adopt the Jewish culture to be Christian. We can honor it and respect it and learn from it, but we don't have to become it. And it's the same way for American Indian people and Christianity, even without that element. We don't have to give up being American Indian to become Christian. And I think what really strikes me the most this week, more than the last 17 years we've been asking for prayer for this, is that since I've been starting my education, going back to school, I'm learning how the scholars have been picking apart the Scriptures since the very first century. And all of the work that's been done to validate the authors of the Scripture, the context of the Scripture, the meaning of the Scripture, and then the different languages that it has originally been presented and translating it into English and all of that. Nowhere in there, in all of those studies and all of those scholars and all that education and research, is there anything that suggests that we need to give up our American Indian culture to fully become Christian. And for me, that's really validating. And I can't understand why things are the way they are in this country or why they have been for the last 500 years in that context. But I'm glad to know that for thousands of years, as people have studied the Scripture, that that's not part of it. And so we just ask that you would join us in prayer for our American Indian people and those serving in First Nations ministry, that we will have confidence in our ethnic identity, in our cultural identity, as we embrace Christianity, and that we can fully embrace Christianity without having to compromise who we are. Thank you.